Hey guys, welcome back to another Vanguard video. Today we're talking about Charmout as well as the Alestial support that we got today. I think Charmout is looking like one of the best ride lines, honestly, to get support, especially in terms of dress up from this set. And it does have a persona locked ability, is looking quite strong, basically doing what the deck was doing before, but even better. So first off, we have Cadeau d'Amour Charmout. I'm just adding the de there because I think that's what the heart is supposed to be, but it is Cadeau Heart Amour, so literally gift heart in French. Anyways, you have the DressUp regarded as the original name, and then act on Vanguard Circle once per turn, costs counterblast 1, choose a number of grade 2 or less cards with DressUp in their card name from your solo drop. Yes, my French is really washed, but I'm going to try and pronounce it. And the number chosen being less than or equal to your opponent's Vanguard grade, call them to Vanguard Circle, and this unit gets +5 until end of turn. So here's the original Charmout. It's a little bit different. Basically, when you go first, you're going to call the 1 and the 0 because the 1 gets to draw 1 and goes back to soul. And then when you go second and your opponent is on grade 3, you get to call your entire ride line, which is 0, 1, and 2. So you get, the targeted countercharge soul charge when you use the on attack while not boosted ability. You also get the shove back to soul draw 1, and then the free starter just to copy your Vanguard's power and become a really, really giant booster. So quite a good upgrade, I would say. A little bit of a slight upgrade for the act compared to the original. Then the auto Vanguard Circle skill, when this unit attacks while not boosted, you choose 3 of your grade 2 or less rear guards with DressUp in their card name with different names, and increase or decrease their power to match this unit's power until end of turn. So in case you don't know, that's Charmout's gimmick, where you basically make the power of your DressUp rears the same as Vanguard. If the unit's power is 33,000 or greater, and your opponent's Vanguard is a grade 3 or greater, you cost Soul Blast 2. Until end of turn, the back row center column rear guard chosen by this ability can attack from the back row. It performs charge checks, and if you persona row this turn, you cost discard a card from your hand, and it gets drive +1 until end of turn. So Charmout can do 4 drives on persona ride turn. So still going second, you're still doing 3 drives, 4 attacks, because you have giant van, and then your rears on the side will be copying the power and boosting something, as well as the rear behind van that does get that single drive and will be matching Vanguard's power. So on persona ride turn, usually Charmout is hitting pretty big. Obviously the minimum threshold is 33. Persona ride makes that a lot easier because you're already hitting 23, then the act is getting you to 28, and then any of your other +5 skills easily reach that threshold. But once you do pump up Charmout a lot, you are easily going to be reaching columns of like giant numbers, like 50+. Charmout was already doing this before, but this really just helps with the consistency of the deck. So I would say it's quite a big upgrade for the dress up form all around. You could also play the original Charmout as well, because it doesn't make too much of a difference when you go first. The only difference really being is when you go second, you lose out on the 1 extra rear call from soul, because the original Charmout is CB1, choose up to 2 grade 2 or less. So you technically cannot get 3 rears going second, but it's really not too much of a loss because you do want that consistency on persona ride turn. So the basically idea is that you can play the original Charmout and then for the dress up in your deck, and then maybe Gradius Gardale and whatever else, in order to basically have more dress ups and increase your chance to hit those persona rides. It really just depends on deck space, but I think Gradius Gardale is a really good option. Angel Ladder is also a great option. Resist to your board, +5 to your Vanguard. So basically +5 to your entire board once you make all your other rears match Vanguard's power. So quite a simple upgrade, and of course having 4 drives with like 4 giant rears basically says you have to PG or take, or just pray you hit like multiple defensives, because Charmout will be like quite unguardable. Going first, the deck is still only a 3 attack deck, but those numbers will be massive because it's super easy for Charmout to hit like massive power. But you don't really care about the 33,000 or greater power until once you do hit those specific thresholds. The on attack is basically still the same as the original, where you do just get to copy that power for Vanguard and give it to rears. So like your side columns will be at least 30, usually bigger. So pretty much unguardable once you're on grade 2, like when you go second against the deck, when the deck goes first, because those numbers are going to be so big anyways. But I do want to talk about some other rears, because spoiler, when we do get to the wrap up of the deck actually does use energy now, so you do want to use soul. But I want to kind of get these ideas out of the way, and then I'll kind of revisit the idea of these cards later on. So the first card to talk about is an old one, Pleasure. Pleasure is quite a good card from, I believe it's from Festival. So when placed on Vanguard Circle from hand, if you have a grade 3 greater Vanguard with DressUp in its card name, you get to energy +3, choose a card from your soul, call to rear, and then you can soul blast 1, choosing your Vanguards, give it +5. Soul really isn't going to be an issue, and there's also a new rear that shoves the soul and draws 1. So being able to salvage any normal unit from soul is quite strong, and of course there is the grade 1 as well that also shoves from drop back to soul to kind of just toolbox your drop back to soul. I think if we did have the Black Wings like non-nerf where we didn't have, you know, that errata with Alestial, I think Charmout would actually be quite a good tier list deck, like a meta deck. But unfortunately, we don't have that ability to grab PGs from Soul anymore because they did change the restriction for Black Wings where you have to be on Alestial Vanguard. Same for White Wings as well. But yeah, that's just a TLDR. But yeah, the Pleasure just basically gives like free salvage for any normal unit from Soul, and you basically have easy rears to get from drop back to Soul, which is really nice. And of course, Van skill can also just directly come from drop if they for some reason are in your Soul or you had to Soul Blast them out. So really interesting thing to note is that the new rear uses 3 energy, which we'll get to in a second. So I think Soul Blast cyclers are very, very valuable. And because you don't care too much about your soul, you can just call it back from drop off the skill. Besides, you know, the Soul Blast 2 for Vanguard skill, I think Velshoblen looks really, really strong. When discarded from hand during your ride phase, Soul Blast 1, bot deck it, draw 1. The Persona Run Ride effect can also come up, CB1 +5 to your front row. This will, you know, also apply for the +5 power to Van when you copy the power and buff up the other rears. Usually they'll be boosting, especially because the new rare wants to be boosted by Liversuve rear guards. But yeah, I think Soul Blast cyclers like Velsh are really strong, as well as, I believe it's Lucia. I might be getting the name wrong. Oh, Luciliel, which is quite a strong card because it spawns you Persona Shield tickets, and that is really nice, especially in prison meta, where you do want to shove cards from, you know, Sarah's skill from hand into the prison, or if they prison, you know, turn 2 or whatever from hand, you can just shove that in, free it, empty the prison. Very nice. So I think being able to have Soul Blast cyclers makes the deck really strong because obviously you want to save your CB for other skills and your energy is going to go to the new rear. I think you could still play Prescia and not play the new rear, but the new rear is really, really good once we get to it. So basically you want to free up energy in CB, so Soul Blast cyclers are the way to go. Because there's also a ditch effect, I don't think this will be very good, but I think it's fun to talk about, is Prestro. And Prestro, when discarded from hand during your turn, if your Vanguard is grade 2 grade, you can Soul Blast 1, call this card to a rear circle. If it's your battle phase, it cannot attack, and then it gets boost if a card was returned to hand. So that's not really happening in Charmout, but you know, it's kind of funny to bring up because it is nice in the early game. This card really I've only seen in like Downer and Marlene lists as well as Highlander, so it's probably not good in this deck, but interesting that you do have discard a card from hand fodder. There's also Celino as well, which is the E3 remover from Festival to add a card from drop back to hand when you ditch. Sorry, not any card from drop to hand, the card you discarded from the effect back to hand. But you know, I think with Charmout it's really just easier to be simple and play the new rears that are really, really good. So those are kind of the tech cards I did want to talk about. Again, for Persona Ride, it's basically, or sorry, not Persona Ride. For Regulus pieces, it's basically Angel Ladder or Greatest Gradale. There are, of course, tons of other options. You, of course, have Caliburn, which is really good. You also have, you know, Regulus, but I think Racing Angel Ladder and Greatest Gradale will be the most popular options, especially because Greatest Gradale is just like another Persona Ride in your deck. The other card I wanted to talk about as well is Demonic Teaser Visha. This is something that a friend brought up. So I think this card's really funny. I didn't even know this card existed until they told me about it. At the end of the battle that it swung, you can retire itself to look at the top 7 cards of your deck and choose up to 1 card with the DressUp ability, reveal it, put your hand, and shuffle the deck. Of course, does nothing for whiffing, but if you are playing the 4 main deck DressUps and the original Charmout in the right deck, you do have a lot of hits that you could potentially hit from the top 7. So I think it's a really interesting card. Probably isn't what Charmout is going to be playing, but it is kind of an early game card you can slam down, and it does get +5. You have DressUp, so at worst it's just like another rear you have in the front row to be boosted by your giant Liversuve rear guards. And you know, it is funny that it can top 7 hits, and it is technically costless, but of course does nothing for whiffing. So just a card to keep in mind that you might want to try out in some lists. But I think the simple list will just be the really good rears that were revealed alongside Charmout that are really, really, really strong. So next up we have the triple rare, which is Rop Heart Rokrak. My gosh, say that 10 times fast. We have Auto and Soul. When your unit is placed on rearguard circle from Soul by the ability of your grade 3 greater Vanguard with Liversuve in its card name, so the Vanguard's act. If you have no rears with the same name as this card, you can cost Counterblast 1, call this card to rearguard circle, choose one of your Vanguards, and it gets +5 until end of turn. Then Auto rearguard circle. At the end of the battle, this unit was boosted by a unit with Liversuve in its card name. You cost Energy Blast 3, put this unit into your soul and draw 1. So more cycle on top of the drive checks you're already doing with Charmout, which is really good. So on your Persona Ride turn, you're doing basically 4 drives if you pay obviously the pitch cost and you Persona Road. And then if you have 2 of these in the front row, you can Energy Blast 6 and then draw 2. So you're cycling 6 cards, which is quite good. Your hand isn't as fake, and of course there's also cards that gain more shield in the deck that we'll look at next. So quite a strong card, and it's basically a Combat Rusher that activates from Soul, and your CB doesn't really need to go to anything else in Charmout, plus you have the grade 2 ride line to Soul Charge, Countercharge when it's targeted anyways. So I think this card is just amazing, like wow, this card is just really, really good for the deck. I think between this and Charmout, those are the cards you're 100% going to play. I think the double rare is still really good as well, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, this card is just straightforward, really good. Basically, every turn is going to be EB3 draw 1 because you're perfectly fine with your Liver Suv rears being boosted because they were already doing that as a role anyways in the back row. I think the only thing is that this basically confirms or basically implies that you don't want to play the DressUp Shenri, and plus the DressUp Shenri will only be active on turn 3 or if you played order, and Charmout doesn't really play any orders early. So I think this is basically the direction they want you to take with the deck, where you always have the Liver Suv rears boosting as they were basically before. It's not like the playstyle of the deck is really changing, but at the same time you're being rewarded for energy bossing 3, getting this back to soul and drawing 1, and then of course because it goes back to soul you can activate it next turn, so it loops itself very easily. And you know, its skill can still go off even if you've activated a rare of the same name. It's not worded like, you know, the other cards where you can basically only have like one on its board or whatever, and then you can't activate the effect. Kind of similar to Antigaster is what I'm thinking of. But anyways, the point is if you have 2 of these in your front row, you can EB3 for each of them, so EB6 total, and then shove both to soul, draw 2, which is really, really nice cycle just to find your pieces because you don't have, you know, the Black Wings effect to salvage anything from your soul anymore. So quite a strong ability. I think you're definitely be playing 4 of this along with obviously 4 of the new Charmout. So just amazing card all around. The next card is a little bit less underwhelming, at least when I read it at first, but going over it again, it's actually not bad. It's a double rare, so we have Holy Ornament Forbera, so continuous Vanguard Circle, Guardian Circle. If you have a Vanguard with Liver Suv in its card name, this unit gets shield +5, so that will be active early because the entire ride line is named. Then if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, this unit gets +5k, also active in your opponent's turn. So really, really nice. 10k power, 15k power, and then you have 10k shield increments. So if Charmout wants to swap from draws to affect fronts, I was talking about it with a friend, you could make the deck a lot more tanky because now you have 10k, 20k shields, plus you also have really great cycle from the new grade 2, the triple rare we just looked at. So I think, you know, Charmout is looking a little bit more defensive than before, and you know, that's without getting to techs such as like, you know, your blitzes, your Regulus, putting in Twin Cast. I mean, I think Twin Cast is kind of, this is actually one of the decks where you don't really want Twin Cast in your deck because I think Gratias Gardale is probably a lot stronger, as well as maybe Ladder depending on the meta, especially if Prison is really strong or popular. But yeah, I think this card just from the first ability is really strong. Then it has the second act in drop. You cost bind 2 cards with the same name as its card from your drop. So, you know, when you intercept it or throughout the game, that's probably going to be happening anyways. You choose one of your Vanguards with Liver Suv in its card name, and it gets +5 until end of turn. So another easy +5 on top of Pleasure and Vanguard skill and all the other stuff to make your Vanguard even massive, probably reaching like 53 or bigger, and, you know, copying that power and giving it to all your rears. The one behind Van that is doing that one drive, and then, you know, the additional drive when you Persona ride, as well as your columns on side. So, I mean, Charmout was already hitting these massive numbers, but I think this card and the triple rare really help patch up not necessarily the weaknesses of the deck. I mean, the weakness of the deck is obviously the defense, but it really does help stabilize the deck a lot more. And I think in theory, with effect 20k fronts, as well as this being a 10k shield, your guarding should be a whole lot easier and very efficient. And then of course you also have the energy boss cycle draw, including from the triple rare. And then of course you also have, you know, your early cycle draw from ride phase cyclers such as Lucia or Veshovan. So I think Charmout is looking really, really, really strong. So last card to talk is Warmth at Delivers Comfort Mashtra. This card is just blind soul charge, place Vanguard Circle from hand. Soul charge 1 for every 2 of your units with Liver Suv in its card name. You soul charge total 2 more cards. Choosing your Vanguards gets +5 on a turn. This is easy to get a bunch of rears, so it's just random soul charge. But yeah, that pretty much does it for the Charmout cards. I think I'm quite satisfied. I wasn't exactly expecting the, you know, playstyle of the deck to really change much. And I was really expecting the deck to get a little bit more of a defensive skill, but it would be really hard to slap onto Van because there's already so much text on it. And I think the dress up is still quite an improvement. Like getting that extra drive is really strong. Charmout was technically already a 3 drive deck. You know, obviously just going, you know, first, it's a lot of it is locked to grade 3 opponent Van, especially like the drive check ability and the back row attack. So, you know, that would be, you know, restricted. Obviously, they didn't change that because, you know, already having to deal with like 3 giant columns is already quite unguardable when you go second, unless you hit like a billion defensives or, you know, have like, you know, several 15k shields or, you know, affect 20k shields to guard. But yeah, I think Charmout overall looks really, really strong. As I already talked about, I said everything I wanted to after discussing with some other people that actually play Lyrical. So those are kind of my thoughts. I already went through all the tech cards earlier because I wanted to get that out of the way. And I think it's a really interesting discussion in terms of just kind of seeing like slight changes of how the deck list might change and how the deck will look a lot stronger than before. There's also spoilers. I'm going to talk about it later. A brand new Lyrical Monasterio Cup in JP as well. So we'll see a lot more results. I think obviously the the meta contenders are going to be, the Divine Scale decks such as Chris Rain and Lishkafel, as well as, the usual contenders like Kyrie, the rogue decks, blah, 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 Michu, Arsaria, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I think Charmout looks really, really good. Do let me know what you think of these reveals and, the tech cards that I talked about after talking with some friends. I do think the Soul Blast cyclers are kind of obvious, and obviously your deck space is like very, very tight as well. But I mean, the new cards are really good. Having like 10k, 20k shield increments if you do play, effect fronts, again, like I mentioned earlier, and the grade 2 that is a 10k shield is really nice for guarding. And of course, having Soul Blast cyclers and having a very easy early game because your ride line calls itself out as well. And, having giant numbers going first or second is really helpful. And of course, that grade 2 will help you stabilize and really just, being able to loop EB3, draw 1 is just really, really, really nice, especially on a rear that is basically guaranteed because it'll call it back off some soul. And you really have no soul disruption besides, Seraph Snow in prison. That's really the only thing in standard. So that might be a bad matchup. I doubt it's like unwinnable. But, at worst, you can always just rush down prison and really just play things like ladder to adapt to the meta. But yeah, anyways, amazing. There's basically just the Alestial cards to cover, and that's pretty much it for this video. Alright, so first off, we have Emergency in the Cold Sky Aliciel. I knew someone who was complaining about this because Alestial already had CC. You can see the giant CC icon slapped on there. So auto when discarded from hand during your turn, if you have Vanguard with Alestial in its current name, you put a card from your bind zone into the drop zone so you can actually reset something, which is nice. You bind this card and both white wings and black wings of your cards are active until the end of your opponent's next turn. You do still need an Alestial Vanguard as a reminder text from Kairos. And of course, basically these effects are already around, but they combined it into one card. You already had CC in Alestial. You already had a card that could make both black and white wings active, but it was kind of bad. So this is basically like a healthier version of that for the deck. Then white wings active only if you have Vanguard with Alestial in its card name. Your bind only has odd grades, but obviously this card is going to make both black and white wings active. Auto Rearguard Circle, at the end of the battle, this unit boosted. If you have not countercharged this turn, cost retire this unit, countercharge 1. So it's not once hard, like it's still hard once per turn countercharge if you want to think of it that way, because if you activated one, you can't activate another. But I guess, I believe the Alestial CC is main phase. I could be wrong on that, but if it is the other way around, then technically you could activate this and then the other one. But yeah, not exactly what Alestial needed. They basically took two good Alestial cards and combined it into one as the double rare, which isn't bad. It's still good support for the deck, but definitely isn't what the deck needed at all. So next card is actually pretty good. We have Candy Lane Luciliel. So auto, when placed on Rearguard Circle, if you have a Vanguard with the Alestial in its card name, you cost Energy Blast 3. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck. Choose up to one card with either the White Wings or the Black Wings ability from among them. Reveal it, put into your hand, and shuffle your deck. So EB3, basically grab any piece out of your deck. The only time really you'll whiff this is if you see like all triggers or all PGs or something. But yeah, being able to basically, this is basically E3, grab any of your rear pieces or Vanguards from deck, which is quite strong. So yeah, really, really good. Then Black Wings, active your Vanguard with Alestial in its card name, and your bind zone only is even grade. You continuous Rearguard Circle during the battle that this unit attacked all of your opponent's guardian, get shield -5. So really, really interesting restriction, or well, it's not really a guard restrict, but debuffing your opponent's shield. But unfortunately, it's an Alestial, so I don't know really how often we'll see this. But Alestial really gets the cool designs in terms of card design, especially for Black Wings and White Wings. Like they literally have cards that basically have premium interactions during your opponent's turn if you've read any of the cards. But unfortunately, it's pretty uncommon to see because Alestial has been quite bad even since the DressUp. And I think really the only people who really enjoy this deck are the hardcore fans. So respect to you if you're one of them. But I think this is definitely not exactly what Alestial need. It's definitely one of the best, or actually the best Alestial support card from this, because they're only getting double rares as one of the older DressUps. But yeah, being able to check top 5 for EB3, grab any piece is amazing. And then the -5 is really hilarious because every card they'll put, because it's an continuous, will basically just get minused during that battle, which is hilarious. So they'll put like a 15k shield. Oh, no, that's not a 15k shield anymore. That's a 10k shield. So actually really annoying for numbers, especially because Alestial can basically, I don't want to say can basically play like Mashtra, but will be basically minusing a bunch of power to your Vanguard. So your opponent is going to have to guard with a bunch of shield anyways. When you combine that their Vanguard is minus like usually 18k power ish is usually what it is, and then on top of this effect, which is minusing 5 shield, and then at least the Black Wings isn't restricted to Persona or whatever other BS they would throw in to restrict Lyrical. But yeah, that is pretty much it. There's one more card to talk about for Alestial. The last card is Canticle Galvert Hardael. So Black Wings active. Continues to regard circle all your grade 2 units in the same column as you can get boost and can intercept from the back row. I'm pretty sure Alestial has better black wings and white wing cards they could be playing than this, and it is just a rare. But, you know, interesting to see that they kind of do want to give more utility to the deck, but not exactly what it needed. Here's the graphic for the Lyrical Cup for WGP for Lyrical Monasterio. As you see, we have Makoto PGs as well as kind of a reprint, but there's an SP version of the Lyrical Red OT. So that is pretty big. That will definitely be worth something. This could be a sign that we might get a similar event in English. I'm kind of hoping that doesn't happen because that basically means that Premium gets either half the events like it did this year or Premium is dead. So I'm hoping that isn't the case. But anyways, that, like, you know, I'm not here to talk about that, but it's really cool that we are getting at least another Lyrical sport, at least guaranteed for these kind of events in JP. So basically foreshadowing that we will get it in English. Very likely, but of course never confirmed. Alright, so that pretty much does it for Charmout as well as Alestial. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think of these reveals. I think Charmout is definitely looking like one of the strongest Lyrical decks to come out of this DZ-LBT02 set. I do think Sweet Linker and Razblaz aren't too far behind, and of course I think the obvious contenders for best Lyrical decks, or at least to bring to like a Lyrical Cup, would obviously be like Alestial as well. Sorry, not Alestial. It would obviously be like Kyrie, Kirsrain, and Lishkafel. I almost said the other one by accident, as well as Artisaria, because lock can be really annoying to some decks, but a lot of the decks can just play Yuika and bounce their front row. But yeah, that pretty much does it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Do let me know what you think of these reveals. Again, really exciting to hear what people think. I think Charmout definitely obviously got one of the best waves of reveals, and next week is Wilista for next Tuesday, and I believe that is it. I think there's something else this Thursday that I'm forgetting, but yeah, that's pretty much it for the Lyrical reveals because it does come out in JP next week. So do let me know what you think of the reveals again. And I'm really excited to see what Wilista gets because Wilista once upon a time was quite the menace. So hopefully it gets something good. And yeah, we'll see you another time in another video. Thank you for watching.